Hello, friends. I'm Michael Kingswood. I write fiction for fun and profit, and I'm trying out a new microphone. See if this works any better. I think it's set up correctly. And if you guys see if you like how it sounds more. Anyway, um, today I wanted to take a minute and revisit an old friend of the channel here. Not really an old friend. We talked about him a couple times, but so Bald Book Geek Will over there in the UK. Uh, Yeah, it brought up some stuff the other day that I wanted to talk about because it's one of those things where it's like I keep hearing the same refrain from writers, and I've heard it for over a decade, and I don't think it really holds true. And so I wanted to discuss that, go through with that. Now, I wanted to premise this by saying, A, just because I'm disagreeing here, I actually, obviously never met Will, but I actually like him from what I see heard of him heard from him on his channel. Um, he seems to be very earnest and forthright, and I like that. We are clearly have different mindsets about things. Sometimes seems to be a little excessively fatalistic and negative, but that may just be uh, me reading into things. Although I do know he's been going through a rough patch lately with some uh, personal matters, and so it's easy to come off. And you're going through a rough time. It's easy to show that you're going through a rough time. So I have no judgment there, only goodwill, no pun intended. But I did want to talk through about this one video he made the other day, just because, again, like I said, I've heard this sort of thing before many times over the years, and I think there's some misunderstandings going on behind it, or I think well, anyway, let's go over here. The big problem with indie publishing that nobody talks about. See what Will's got to say.
About indie publishing. For every absolute gem of book that will blow your mind, there are about 50 others that look like they escaped from someone's high school Word document. Straight to Kindle Direct. No editing, no proofreading, sometimes no shame. And before anyone gets mad, let me say this. Yes, everybody has the right to tell their story. Doesn't mean you have to publish it. In fact, for some of you, please don't. For the love of literature. Simple.
Fair enough, and I agree. Everybody. That's one good thing about the indie publishing is it is democratized. Um, Everybody is free to put their work out there, other people, so that people can see it. And maybe, you never know what people are going to like and what's going to be big. Now, if it's poorly put together, not very good chances. So that's one of the things I like about it. However, it does lead to this other issue that he's going to address, which I spoiler alert, I don't think is as big of an issue as he thinks it is. Let's go on.
Traditional publishing has all these gatekeepers, agents, editors, marketing teams, people's whose job is to say maybe don't release this half-finished vampire werewolf mermaid fan fiction into the world just yet. Indie publishing doesn't have that.
And yet, with all those gatekeepers that traditional publishing has, the history of publishing, if you look, it's always a few really good books, a bunch of pretty decent ones, and a whole lot of stuff that sucks. Even with all the trad publishing gatekeepers and editors and super whammy dime fancy people, right? So let's keep that in mind. I mean, if you look, go to a used bookstore and look at some of the stuff that's been published over the years. There's a lot of weird stuff, a lot of not so good stuff. Great, my dog here, she's staring at me. I just took you for a walk, you silly girl. Hmm. Anyway, hopefully she's patient.
Which sounds great, right? Freedom, power to the people, viva la revolution. But here's a
I don't know about a revolution, but yeah, man, you know, let your freak fly, kind of thing. It's just sort of, hey, man, I think it's better to have the people at large be able to decide if they like a thing than to have a small number of, let's be honest, sometimes very pompous and also limited in their perspective because a small number of people decide what everybody else gets to see. Anyway,
Dirty little secret. In indie publishing, the community has become the gatekeepers.
yep, by design, and it's been that way since it started.
Readers are the ones shifting through the garbage heap, and now there's a lot of garbage. I'm talking
Always has been.
typos on the first page. Someone's NaNoWriMo project they wrote in 30 days and published. Covers that look like they were made in
Hang on a second, shipmate. Hang on a second. This is the original cover of Gloomer Vale, the first book of my Gloomer Vale Chronicles series. I really actually like this cover, but the problem is I changed the cover styles to try to match more fully what the fantasy books look like these days. And also because good as this artist was, when he made 5 different covers for me, but as people started looking at the covers and taken as a whole, they thought it was like a not YA, but almost more middle grade. So it didn't really get the genre down right. But anyway, this book, which a lot of people like, and you should read it because it's good and fun. It's not very long. It's a fun sword. I call it, you know, it's not really sword and sorcery. I call it heroic fantasy. But anyway, point is, this is a NaNoWriMo project. I got most of it done in that November, and I finished the last chapter or two after, and then I spent a few months cleaning it up and getting it ready to go and put it out there. I didn't publish it on December 1st, right after NaNoWriMo, so maybe that's what he's talking about. I did take the time to make it, proofread and edited and make sense and good cover and all that sort of thing. So I'm sure that's what he's talking about. But just because something was made during Nano doesn't necessarily mean it was gone. And, RIP NaNoWriMo. Sheesh. Anyway,
Microsoft Paint, and plots that make fanfiction.net circa 2003 look like War and Peace. Simple. The first thing people see isn't your beautiful, polished novel with professional cover and actual proofreading and editing. No. What they see is a tidal wave of shovelware. The rushed first drafts, the I just learnt about Kindle Direct last week, here's my 500-page novel with no punctuation crowd. And here's the thing, first impressions matter. If you're new to indie books and you type something into Amazon, what do you see? A wall of clip art dragons, shirtless men with glowing tattoos, and titles that read like spam emails. You pick one, give it a shot, it's bad. Now your brain says indie books are trash, never again.
yeah, but does it? I mean, you get the same wall of text in same wall of books. If you go to well, there's no non-indie section, but let's say you walk into a uh, what's it, Waterstones over in England or Barnes and Noble here, you get shelves full of books and just massive swath of them. And you walk through and you pick out one or two, and you're like, oh well, nah, or oh, this looks like it might be okay, and you go take it home, and maybe you hate it, maybe you like it. Are you then turned off from Waterstones or Barnes and Noble forever for that? I don't think so. And he's talking about ebooks primarily, I think, because that's where most indies do their most of their business. The good thing about ebooks is that you can download a sample, so it's like, anyway.
It's the equivalent of walking into a restaurant, ordering food, and the first place you get is a half frozen microwave meal. Are you really going to stick around and try the next one? Probably not, let's be honest. And this is where I'm going to sound mean, but I think it has to be said. A lot of people hit publish way too soon. First drafts, published. NaNoWriMo projects from last year, published. Tweaking fanfiction, published. The fanfic I wrote in my sleep last Thursday, published with the names changed.
Hey, scrape off the serial numbers, right? Anyway, um, yeah, I mean, he's not wrong here.
It's like people forget that publishing a book is supposed to mean you've actually, I don't know, finished the book, edited it, polished it, maybe even had another human look at it before throwing it on Amazon for $2.99 and begging strangers for reviews. And when you skip all of that, you're not just hurting yourself, you're making it harder for every single other indie author who put time and effort and work into their project. Because now the average reader thinks that we're all pumping out unedited Word docs with bad formatting. And honestly,
Does the average reader really analyze it that much, though? I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute.
that's why the indie scene gets such a bad rep.
With whom? Who gives it a bad rep, and what are you basing that on? Seriously, I mean, what is the average reader, and on what basis do you say that indie scene still has a bad rep? With who? Other, trad pub writers, editors, readers who spend all their time on the internet? Okay, well, that maybe, but I mean, that's. Oh, I'll talk about that in a sec.
It's not that brilliant authors who spend years honing their craft, investing in editors, designing actual professional covers. It's the sea of poorly formatted, badly written crap clogging up the shelves. That's what people see first. That's the front door. You walk straight in and it's there.
Well, it really depends on what you're searching for, right? I mean, and what that's going to vary a lot by genre, by search. What I'm assuming we're talking about an Amazon search here. I mean, a lot of times I do searches, and half the stuff that comes up is trad pub stuff. Half the stuff is indie. Uh, I guess it really depends on what you're searching for. It depends on, like, if you're looking for a romantasy, where it's pretty much all indie. I don't know. Well, no, it's not all indie because it's there's I don't know. Uh, Romantasy seems to be what most of BookTube talks about, at least Book Talk anyway. But I don't think that's what Will's talking about. Anyway, I think he's generalizing too much here. Is my point.
So, of course, the average reader thinks indie publishing equals garbage, and you can't
But do they?
really blame them. You can't. Simple. Okay. I can already hear someone in the comments, but I published my debut in 2 weeks and it was amazing. Sure it is, champ. Sure it is. Let me read it.
Well, I think you said. I think Will said he's reading one of my books. I left a comment on part of the reason I'm doing this video is I left a comment on this video of his, and we did a little exchange, and he said he's reading my stuff, which I'm surprised and pleased and flattered by, and I hope he likes it. But yeah, man, I have come read. In fact, all y'all come read. Happy to have you read my stuff. That's why I'm here. In fact, it's right over here, michaelkingswood.com/store. You can find me on Amazon, Barnes& Noble, Kobo, all the other places, but I prefer you to come here because this way I get more money. Anyway,
So here's the silver lining. If you do take the time to dig, if you find authors who actually care, the ones who put effort in, you
guilty as charged.
stumble across some amazing gold. Stories that wouldn't exist in traditional publishing was the only route. Risks that no big publisher would take. Passion projects that are weird, wonderful, and genuinely brilliant. And some of them I've reviewed here and on my Substack. Shameless plug. Go back a little while, check out some recent video reviews. I've read indie books that blew me away. Stuff that stuck with me long after I finished the book. That reminds me of why I love reading. But
Yeah, me too. And I've read trade books that blew me away. And I've read stuff that I think absolutely sucked from both sources.
God, you're going to have to shovel through a lot of glowing eyed, shirtless werewolves and time traveling dragon CEOs to get there.
Dude, you're searching for the wrong genre, I think. But yeah, I hear you. I understand completely.
Now, imagine just being an average reader. You're not on BookTube, you're not on Reddit threads swapping recommendations. You go on Amazon at 11 p.m. at night looking for something new and stumble on an indie book that looks okay, You download it, and yikes. That one bad experience is enough to make you swear off indie entirely.
What is it? You- How do you? On what basis do you say this? I mean, again, I would need to see some sort of. I mean, there's no data on that, but understand the thought process behind it because most readers don't pay any attention to who the publisher is of a book. The readers who are really into reading, who read a lot, they'll learn about it. But a lot of people don't. I mean, but those who are aware of the indie scene versus the trad pub scene, those who are not, scratching themselves, listening to their dog scratch themselves. Sorry, you might have heard her scratching yourself just now. Anyway, the those who are not, pompous or somehow, just are already biased against the indie thing. The ones who I have personally talked to who know about it and learned that indie, authors are able to do indie stuff now, all think it's really cool that authors can do that. And I think they give people a little more leeway who are doing it on their own than they would for somebody who's going through a trad publisher because they know they're doing it on their own. Don't have as many resources, especially if you're, just starting off. So I'm not sure that this assertion is correct.
That's the real tragedy here, because while indie publishing has democratized storytelling, it's also buried the gems under a mountain of junk shoved
Yeah, but there's always been a mountain of junk. There's always been, even in the good old days, which weren't so good. Talk to people who've been writing for 40 years and making a living off it. I know a few of them, and the good old days of trad pub weren't all that good. It's, they are in heaven. Those old school writing guys and gals who have been trad pubbing for years and now they're indie. All of them are like loving life so much more under the indie um, uh, regime because they can control their destiny a lot better. Anyway, but so yeah, but anyway, there's always been there was tens of thousands or hundreds of 50 years ago there was probably tens of thousands of books published by the aughts. There was 100,000 or so books published a year, something like that. This is just in the United States. Um, or even if it's only like 50,000, any one book. Compare if you have 50,000 other books. you're, let's say there's let's say there was 1,000 really good ones, right? There's 50 or 100,000 published. There's a pile of crap that they're buried under. I mean, it's always been that way. The difference now is with ebooks, stuff stays on the shelf forever if it's in ebook form. So the pile gets bigger, but the number of good stuff gets bigger too. Um, yeah, so it's not a new problem.
aware. Piss poor novels. So, what's my spicy take? Yes, indie publishing is freedom, but freedom comes with responsibility. Just because you can publish your first draft doesn't mean you should. If you genuinely care about your story and you actually want readers to enjoy it, then do the work, edit it, polish it, make it something worth putting your name on, not something people will laugh at. Because believe me, there are plenty of places where people laugh at your terrible indie books. Because here's the reality: the stigma around indie publishing is 100% earned.
But is it real? I'll tell you back I started writing late 2010. I was publishing stuff in 2011 you know, back when Barnes& and Noble, Nook first opened up their doors to indies. I was one of the had some of the first books in there. It was before and then right after I published that first few things with them, Amazon said, "We are creating this new thing called KDP Select." And I was like, "Oh crap." And I was just had was in the Go exclusive with us. I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm already on Smashwords and Barnes and Noble. I'm just gonna. I experimented with the KDP Select thing a couple times and it's like never found it to be especially awesome. But the point is, I've been doing this for a while, and I remember back in 2012, people were talking about there was stigma, and back then there actually was because it was a big new thing, especially it was mostly among writers, but among readers a lot more back then. Uh, it was basically written off as a vanity publishing thing. Other writers were looking down on indie types, and of course the editors and all that stuff. It was, but by a few years down the road, 2015, 2016, 2017, that had faded quite a bit. It was still there in some quarters, but people, at least in the industry, were coming around to realizing that this was not only a legitimate way of doing things, but a lucrative way for potentially a more lucrative way than for the writing side of things. And writers came around first, but but it's on it. But and the readers, again, they just know that they like a book, they like a particular author, unless they're one of those high-powered readers who pays attention to a lot of stuff. They don't pay a whole lot of attention to the publisher. Um, with notable exceptions, like in the science fiction world, there are Bane books. Forever and Ever has had its own you know group of Bane fan people who just love Bane books, and there's been a couple of other publisher houses like that that had their own followings as a house, but not that many. So, and as we've continued on here, now we're the indie thing really got possible in 2009. It got really rolling, 2010, 2011. When Amazon changed from its previous thing to KDP. And then you had, what was her name? The, Amanda Hawking. That's her name. Oh, shoot. I'll forget her name, but she indie published some stuff in 2009, 2010, then got like a big deal. Like the publishers gave her like $2 million for her book, and she moved over to the traditional side. Then you had what's his name? Joe Conrath. It's Joe Conrath I'm thinking of. Him and some others. A friend of his made big news by turning down a $500,000 book contract to go indie. And they did a lot of projects together for a while. I lost track of both of them. The guy who I haven't heard from him in a while. There's a bunch of people who sort of who from the trad side who very vocally and very on the uh, openly stormed into the indie world that sort of validated a bit. And this is back in 2011, 2012. And they fought the good fight against pushback from uh, the the literati at the time. And but from my observation, now again, I'm less into the writerly drama. I keep track of every little thing space than I was 5 years or so ago, just because I've got kids are older, doing a lot more other things. Got a doggy now who won't stop whining at me, even though I just took her out for a walk. You sweet little girl. And so maybe there is still a whole bunch of drama about that, but if it is, it's not nearly as much as it was. I'm not. Anyway, I'm not sure about the stigma thing, to be honest with you.
It didn't come out of nowhere, and the only way it's going to go away is if more indie authors start treating publishing with the respect that it deserves and your work with the respect that it deserves. So, yeah, indie publishing is incredible, but it's also a minefield. You've got freedom, but you've also got chaos. You've got masterpieces, and you also get whatever that thing it was with the vampire, mermaid, time travel love triangle. The problem isn't the
Some people like those vampire mermaid love triangles books, though. Some people do. Not my cup of tea, but hey.
indie books can't be great. That's not a problem. It's the sheer volume of trash. Mate,
Again, it's always been a volume of trash. I'll talk about the numbers here in a second.
makes it way too easy for people to dismiss the whole thing. And until we deal with that, the stigma around indie publishing is going to stick. Anyway, what do you think? Have you ever dug through the Kindle slush pile and actually found something amazing? Or did you
Yeah, several times. Several times. Um, and, some of the books that I liked best that I found in the Kindle slush pile were not well formatted. And some of them didn't have, and some of them had a bunch of typos. But, they were just fun. It was fun stories. And it was fun enough that that I didn't really care about. I mean, you notice the typos, you notice formatting, but if it's story grabs you enough, it doesn't matter that much. Not saying we shouldn't proofread and shouldn't properly format the books. I'm saying that a good story will overcome that if it's good enough. Anyway, um, and like I said, I like Will a lot. I think he's off base here, and here's why. So the I mentioned, how many books, 100,000 a year, 50,000 a year. I remember specifically back in 2011, 2012, somebody was commenting that, holy cow, we're almost up to 1 million books on Kindle now. Oof, man. And then in 2015 or so, someone's like, holy cow, we're over 1 million. We're approaching 2 million. Oh my God, all is lost. There's 2 million books on Kindle now. We're never going to be found. Oh my gosh. Remember the good old days when you could just put a book up with a bad cover and everyone would buy it, which of course is not what really happened. You could never just throw something up and have it magically catch, right? It always had to be, I mean, yeah, there was lightnings out of the blue things, but in general, that's the myth of the good old days of the gold rush is kind of a myth because uh, there were, you know, again, tens of thousands of books published and a few did really well, just like in the, the bad old trad days. Anyway, and now I haven't looked at the numbers, but I think there's like 6 or 7 million books on Kindle now, right? So talked about this a couple of videos, a few videos back. It was like, and people are going to say, well, hey, Kingswood, I mean, geez, at one point there was only 1 million. Now there's 7 million. Look, the odds are so much worse. Well, not really. Because when the numbers are that big, it doesn't matter. I've meant to look this up. So the odds of being struck by lightning, odds of being struck by lightning. Pardon me for a second. So the CDC, um, the DuckDuckGo search assistant says that 1 in 15,000. Huh, okay. CDC just gives percentages. It just gives numbers. Um, okay, odds of being struck, according to the search assistant, odds of being struck by lightning in a given year are less than 1 in 1 million, and over a lifetime, the chance is about 1 in 15,000. Most of the time, people survive. Of course, that's going to be the odds are going to be different, right? If you're in a sailboat in the middle of the ocean during a thunderstorm, yeah, a lot of cruising sailors, not a lot, but some cruising sailors really take hits into their boat and it causes all kinds of catastrophes. But the boat usually doesn't sink, but it does get damaged a lot, and the guys get stranded. The rigging's messed up and it costs them a whole lot of money. And a lot of times insurance doesn't cover it. It really sucks for them. Anyway, the point is, so less in any year. So let's say there's 1 million books. Odds of being struck by lightning eh, are much, much, much better from a success standpoint of being struck than the odds of your book being found. But nobody worries about being struck by lightning because it's so unlikely, right? Unless you're a pool of water and the thunderstorm's coming by or something like that. Um, so 1 in 1 million chance. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get found. 1 in 7 million chance. Still not going to happen. Well, there's less likelihood to happen, but it's less. It's still in the same order of magnitude. And that order of magnitude is so small that, yeah, it's not going to happen unless you do something to make it happen, right? Um, I think Will says he was reading my books. The only reason he's probably reading one of my books is because I had reacted to one of his videos and he saw that I reacted to it, and that's brought me to his attention, right? I mean, there's so this notion that the stack of bad stuff compared to good stuff is so big, it's overwhelming. Yeah, it is overwhelming, but it always has been, right? Back when there was a million books, back when there was only 500,000 books, back when there was 10,000 books, and maybe that's different, but it's the odds are so low against you being found absent any uh, active steps to help it happen that it's not going to happen. And the fact that the stack is bigger now doesn't change that. The writer's biggest problem is obscurity. It's not piracy. It's not anything else. It's obscurity. Assuming the writer's doing his job of, you know, writing well and you know, getting the book put together right and all that sort of thing. You can't help what anybody else does. You just do your best, do your thing. And the number of other people out there putting their books out doesn't matter. Just doesn't matter. Well, Kingswood, I mean, you're not a big name and how much money are you making? Not a lot. Well, don't you think that's telling? Yeah, it's telling. What's telling about is the fact that I haven't written enough to really do it. I've you know, just published my 10th novel and I've got 12. I'll be putting my 12th collection of short story fiction out here shortly. Uh I work for Space, military science fiction collection Kickstarter just finished up. It was a good success. Got a fair amount of money by my standards for it, and we're getting it out to people in the next couple months here. So I'm making a lot of money. It's gradually growing. But if I had in the last 14 years that I've been writing, if I'd done at a better pace, if I had 30 books now instead of 10, 30 novels now instead of 10, well, it's I might be making more. But is what it is. The problem isn't that there's so many other books out there. The problem is I haven't been productive as I need to be, and also, frankly, I have a lot of other things going on, and I don't always give the business side of it the attention that it should. So, so does that mean that what I'm saying here is wrong? No. Does that mean what I'm saying here is right? Well, yeah, because I'm saying it. Don't you know I'm right? But anyway, the point is, I don't think it matters. But the other thing, the angle to this that I s- Will talked about the average reader, average person who's not a book doc or whatever, and I'm like, is gonna hate indie writing because of a listen. I've already said I don't think so, but I think when you're on book talk and when you're on the internet all the time, it can be very easy to think that the internet is real, right? Um, I went and did a quick search. Who are the who are the biggest booktube creators? Found a page with 10 biggest booktube creators. I have no idea if this is accurate, but it looks like it's good. I don't know anything about book talk. I'm not interested in book talk. I think TikTok is I'm not interested in it. But I went and I added up if these top 10 people have 6.8 million people subscribe to them. Now most YouTubers, have more people watching them than just subscribing, and there's a whole bunch of other booktubers out there. So I multiply that by three, gets it to 20.4 million. So let's say 21 million people are watching booktube at some point. Well, there's 350,000 people about in the United States. In UK, where Will is, there's about 70 million, so 420 million people. Um, Now, 18% of the population in the United States is under is under the age of 15. So I'm not going to count them. Now, teenagers read adult books. I did. A lot of others do. So if you get the 81.5% of people who are above age 15, that's 342.3 million people. I found a couple of different things. This is a YouGov thing from 2023. I don't need that. There's in 2025, you know, just over half of the population reads at least one book a year, and 2022 is about the same. I'm going to do this 2023 thing because it breaks down by age. So let's break it down by number of books, right? So let's say, okay, maybe the average reader is probably 1 to 5 books, is probably this guy, right? But let's say we're only talking about the number of readers who read more than 5 books. Well, this is 18, 29% of the population reads more than 5 books a year. So times nine. So that's 99,267,000 people, assuming that the percentage of books read trend is the same in the UK as in the United States. And since, we're both of British stock, then it's probably a decent thing. So it's basically just under 100 million people who read more than 5 books a year. 21 million are on BookTube, and these are rough numbers. So almost 5 times as many people out there reading as are sitting around on YouTube watching people talk about books and reading. So what does that mean? I think it means that the impression that one gets about the opinions of the overall reading population is very slanted when you're looking at it on YouTube compared to what it really is in reality, probably, right? Because you're talking, a quarter of the sample size is a quarter of the population. Now, it's good for statistical analysis for things like polling. In fact, that's way too much more. But so maybe you could get a good impression if you did a scientific poll with that YouTube watching population. But I don't, or there's nothing even approximating a scientific survey of these guys. So, uh, and Will, again, no offense to Will, brother, you're a YouTuber. You make YouTube videos all the time. You seem to spend a bunch of time on with it. It's like maybe you're transposing YouTube world for real world when talking about how 'cause people will go on YouTube or the internet and say, "Oh, if I get turned off by this," and they claim a bunch of stuff that they don't actually do in real life, right? So I think we're transposing internet onto reality when maybe it doesn't need to be, and um, uh, overemphasizing a barrier that I don't think really matters that much. Now, I could be wrong. I've been wrong once or twice, but oh boy, uh, more than that. But it's fun to pretend. Anyway, I just wanted to talk that through. Again, I like Will a lot. What I've seen of him, obviously never met him in real life, but seems like a good dude. Um, But again, I've heard the same thing from writers so often. Oh, the stack is so big. Oh, there's so many books. And it's every couple years you hear this from people. There's usually folks who haven't been around writing for very long or who just don't understand the size of numbers and how, you know, you know, sorts of statistical things work. Yeah. I guess I'm I tend to sometimes have a low opinion of writers because I'm an engineer by training and engineers are the true master race. And and writers are not. Anyway, I think I've said all I need to say about this one. Like I said, uh, go check if you haven't subscribed to Will, make sure you do. Make sure you subscribe here with me, And go check out my books over on books.kingswood.com/store, or you can find me over on Amazon and Barnes& and Noble and all the rest. My latest novel, Warfare Qualified, is, uh, came out at the end of June, and the Rig for Space collection that I mentioned by the kickstarted here a little while earlier in this video, that is set in the same universe, and that'll be released to the public at large in October. Um, so you'll have to wait on that a little bit. If you back the campaign, you'll get it sooner. But anyway, yeah, go check out Warfare Qualified. You're gonna love it. And here's a quick little teaser trailer about it.